Hey, welcome back to the Big Ranch Show. As always, thank you for joining me. If you could, hit that subscribe button down below and let's get right to it. Now, the other day I made a video about COPPA and how it would affect a lot of channels here on YouTube. And I know a lot of people are talking about it, but on Friday the FTC dropped some new information and a few more guidelines on how to know whether or not your content is child-directed. Now, I was really up in arms about it, really concerned about it, but I'm not so concerned for my channels, but I am still concerned for family vlogs and other people like that who do videos who happen to have their kids in their videos. But I'm not sure how it's going to work for those channels, and we'll see. They'll have to seek, legal representation to see how that works. Like a kid behind a camera, they now have a child, and sometimes his nephews and stuff are in the videos. So I guess we're gonna see how it goes with some of those channels and some of your other, channels like your Bataleys and things like that. But let me get down to it here. Under a section titled "How Channel Owners Can Determine If Their Content is Directed to Children," and it goes on to say, under COPPA, there is no one-size-fits-all answer about what makes a site directed to children, but we can offer some guidance. To be clear, your content isn't considered directed to children just because some children may see it. However, if your intended audience is kids under the age of 13, you are covered by COPPA and have to honor the rules and requirements. Now, they didn't make that very clear in their press conference the other day, now did they? No, in their press conference the other day and their information they put out the other day, they were saying things to the extent of, if a kid watches your videos, or say a person allows their kid to watch a bunch of kid videos, and then all of a sudden your channel pops up in the list of shows that were watched, they're going to assume that those views are by kids, including that next video that may be yours. Now, that doesn't seem to be the case, even though that's what I was reading and what I was hearing in their little press conference the other day. But at least they're understanding that not everything is the same. That there are issues here. I'm going to skip over the rules that are set out because I'm going to read that to you in a different section of the video. But going on, it says, the determination of whether a content is child-directed will be clearer in some context than in others. But we can share some general rules of thumb. First, unless you're affirmatively targeting kids, there are many subject matter categories where you don't have to worry about COPPA, such as employment, finances, home ownership, home improvement, or travel. You may not be covered unless that kind of stuff you actually gear towards children under the age of 13, and I don't know why you would. I would never intend any of my videos on any of my channels to anyone under the age of 16, let alone under the age of 13. Let's see. Moving on. The same would be true for videos aimed at high school or college kids. On the other hand, if your content includes traditional children's pastimes or activities, it may be child-directed. For example, the FTC recently determined that an online dress-up game was directed towards children, as an example they're giving. That gives you a link on how to, about that story. Second, just because your video has bright colors or animated characters doesn't mean you're automatically covered by COPPA. While many animated shows are directed to kids, the FTC recognizes that there are animated programming that appeals to everyone. Well, here's another one of those things in their press conference and their press releases from the last week that the FTC didn't bother to tell you, which created a huge uproar here on YouTube. The reason I'm making an update video to my other video because they did not make this clear. And the information they gave last week or so, it made very clear that it said anything with bright, vibrant colors would be considered child's content. In their little blog here about their decision, that is not the case. It's like I said, so don't worry about it. Just because you happen to have animated characters doesn't necessarily mean your content is going to be covered by COPPA. That's not necessarily the case. Like, I really freaked out because I made a video about Spongebob, and a crazy professor calling it racist. I wouldn't change my thumbnail simply because of the fact that I was scared that COPPA would pop me simply for having that character in the thumbnail. It's not necessarily the case. It more matters about the context and what's going into it than what the FTC laid out in their initial plans. I'm going to guess that could be because they could be saying this because they totally, dropped the ball in their description of what they were doing. I don't know. Third, the complaint against YouTube offers some examples of channels the FTC considered to be directed to children. For example, many content creators explicitly stated in the About section of their channel that their intended audience was children under the age of 13. Other channels made similar statements in communications with YouTube. In addition, many of the channels featured popular animated children's programs or showed kids playing with toys or participating in other child-oriented activities. Some channel owners also enabled settings which made their content appear to you when users searched for names of popular toys or animated characters. Finally, if you've applied the factors listed in the COPPA rule and still wonder if your content is directed to children, it might help to consider how others view your content and content similar to yours. Has your channel been reviewed on sites that evaluate content for kids? Is your channel or channels like yours mentioned in blogs of parents of young children and media articles about child-directed content? Have you surveyed your users, or is there other empirical evidence about the age of your audience? So that's what that's all about. Okay, that's what they put down on their blog about what might constitute child content. And I believe the more I read this, the more I believe that my channels will be safe. But like I said, there are a lot of channels out there, like some of your adult toy review channels or things like that, where you may be considered, it may end up being considered child content. And I don't think it should be. Because some of us adults, as much as some of these stuffed shirt people over the FTC may not understand, a lot of us adults like toys. We have there are adults that like stuffed animals, adults that like toys. I have my own little collection of Pop toys, for example. Now, I don't open them on camera simply because I don't do well with unboxings. I used to do unboxings before on I'm a Give the Camera channel with my sci-fi boxes and WWE loot crates and things like that, but I don't anymore. It goes on to say down here, though, it says, isn't the FTC taking another look at the COPPA rule? It says, yes, the FTC is currently evaluating the rule in light of rapid changes in technology. If you'd like to comment on the effectiveness of the COPPA rule and whether changes are needed, the FTC has extended the comment deadline to December 9th, 2019. And I will link you that in the description below on how you can go and, leave a comment and everything like that at regulations.gov. And in the top right corner, you will see a section that says comment now. And I will leave you that in the description below. Now, I told you there's another list, but I'm going to read it from the YouTube page as opposed to the FTC page, because I believe the YouTube page makes it a lot clearer. Okay, according to the FTC guidance on COPPA, a video is child directed, which we call made for kids. If children are primary audience based on factors described below, children are not the primary audience, but the video is still directed to kids based on a few of the factors below. When deciding whether or not your channel is made for kids, you should consider various factors, including the subject matter. For example, educational content that is made for preschoolers. Now, like my Get With the Camera channel, I do a historical series called The Oldest Town Vlogs, where I discuss historical events going on here in Nacogdoches and other news that's taken place in Nacogdoches in the history of the oldest town in Texas. And that would not be covered under this because it's not geared towards preschoolers in the least. I wouldn't consider any of my stuff to be geared towards people that young or anyone under the age of 13. Let's see. Whether children are the intended or actual audience for your video. There again, not on any of my channels, but there are people out there where that is the case. Whether the video includes child actors or models. Apparently if there's child actors and stuff like that in it, then that's going to be considered directed to kids in most cases. Whether the video includes characters, celebrities, or toys that appear to children, including animated characters or cartoon figures. Now, from what I'm reading and what I've been seeing on the FTC page and everything, if you're just discussing animated stuff, or it's an animated show that, even adults would like, or that appeals to adults or whatever, they're going to take the context of the animation into account. Because there are a lot of things, like myself, I watch SpongeBob SquarePants every day. It's one of my favorite mind-numbing shows that I watch, and I really enjoy watching it. And it's just something I do. Yeah, I know, I'm old, and people think I shouldn't be watching it, but you know what? It's something I enjoy. And so I hope the FTC, understands that, because that's what they were saying in their thing, that it's not necessary, just because you have animated characters or something like that in your videos does not mean you're covered by COPPA and all that mess. It just means that, it's obvious if it's directed straight to children. Right? If you're discussing SpongeBob SquarePants in a context more towards high schoolers, college kids, or adults or whatever, that's one thing. But if you just say you find a copy of a SpongeBob video and you don't get a copyright strike on it from the actual creator of the show, Nickelodeon, then if you're like saying showing SpongeBob is just showing it with no explanation, then yeah, you might be covered by COPPA. Discussing it like I did my video a while back, not necessarily the same thing. Whether your video includes activities that appeal to children, such as play acting, simple songs or games, or early education. Whether your video includes songs, stories, or poems for children, like Dr. Seuss, things like that. Other information you may have, any other information you may have to help determine your video's audience, like empirical evidence of your video's audience. And they say that YouTube Analytics is not necessarily designed to help determine if your content is child directed. But based on everything that I am seeing, and based on everything I've read from the FTC and everything YouTube has released since then, or since Friday when the FTC released more information, it has made it very clear that it should be obvious whether or not your content is child directed. Now, from now on here on my channel, I'm going to try to make sure that every single one of my videos has a disclaimer in front of it that says that the content is not intended for children under the age of 13. That if you are under the age of 13, that you are not welcome on my channel. So I want to make that clear. If you're under the age of 13, please stop watching my videos if you have ever watched one. Now, YouTube Analytics say no one under the age of 18 has ever viewed one of my videos on any of my channels. But like they said, analytics is not necessarily going to tell you whether or not if you're making child-directed content or not. So that said, if you're under the age of 13, please click off my video now and do not come back to my channel. But anyhow, that's what I have for you. That's what I'm seeing. Doesn't look like it's as near the apocalypse as it was looking the way they announced it a week or so ago. But it's still going to be bad for some channels. There's people that do toy channels, there's things like that where it could have some effect. It's going to have effect on some of the gaming community as well. It just depends what your video is about. What kind of gaming are you doing? Is it a game that's intended for children? Is it not intended for children? Because I would say something like Red Dead Redemption, not made for children. Something like maybe SimCity or or something, say like, I don't know, Minecraft, that might be more directed to children. But I don't think it's as much of an issue as people were making it out to be a week or so ago. And I've got to say that I don't blame the people here on YouTube for freaking out. I really don't. Because the FTC and YouTube did not make it clear to us creators what the hell was going on. Just all of a sudden there was all this random stuff. Like there was a list in the original thing that I saw from the FTC saying anything involving sports, period. Sports? Really? So you're going to tell me that if I discussed the NFL, that was kid content? You know, or if it was just had vibrant colors in it, boom, automatically covered by COPPA? That was the information we were given a week or so ago. But thank God the FTC has put some more information out, and hopefully some people will be able to look at this new content and have a better idea of how their content rates as far as being child directed or not. Also, as well, hit the go to that link that I'm going to put in the description and try to do what you can to leave a comment there. Don't do anything vulgar or anything like that. That doesn't help the cause one bit. Explain exactly why the COPPA rule and the way it's being enforced, it's going to, hurt your channel. The way it's going to hurt YouTube and the way it's going to hurt the community in general. Then my suggestion is to head over to the StoryFire app, work over there, because StoryFire doesn't collect data, especially doesn't collect data on children. So that's where we stand here on the COPPA ruling. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And check me out on Patreon. I'm still doing a drive over there. I got one new subscriber on my drive, so I'll be donating like $5 myself, I guess, later in December to the Arbor Day Foundation and the Team Trees Initiative. Unfortunately, only one person has joined. If more people join, like I said in the earlier video, if you join the Patreon channel as a paid subscriber at $1 a month, I will take half of whatever I earn for the month of November from Patreon, from new subscribers anyway, and donate it to Team Trees. Anyhow, this has been The Big Rad Show. I've been your host, Jacob Cack. I'll see you down the road.